What a night at the Sphere. And a changing of the guard. Merab Dvalishvili earning the Bantamweight championship with his 11th straight win. That's the second longest active win streak in the UFC behind Islam Makhachev's 14 straight wins. And Merab, your new Bantamweight champion. And for more, welcome in CBS Sports combat writer Shak Mahjouri. Merab Dvalishvili beats Sean O'Malley via unanimous decision for his 11th straight win. You scored it the way the judges did. He earns the UFC Bantamweight belt. Your reaction is to what you saw in 5 rounds?
I mean, you know, a one-of-a-kind event for the UFC at the Sphere in Las Vegas, commemorated by a truly bizarre fight. It played out basically one of the two ways people expected, right? Either Merab was going to relentlessly pursue and execute those takedowns, or Sean O'Malley was going to capitalize on the striking defensive gaps and score a knockdown or a knockout. 48-47 on 2 of those judges' scorecards. The fight was mostly Merab's from start to finish, but O'Malley did just enough, especially in that 5th round with the front kick to the body to send his opponent reeling. So on paper, close, but in reality, almost entirely the fight was trending in Merab's decision. But can we talk about all that insanity that took place in the first 2 rounds?
Let's talk about all the insanity. Starting beef, we got Merab kissing Sean O'Malley. We got Herb Dean coaching up fighters in the octagon. I don't know if I've ever seen that.
Yeah, well, you know, I was planning on asking Merab. He wasn't the most jovial guy when I interviewed him a couple weeks ago, but I was going to ask him because I know that he has some tension with Sean's coach, Tim Welch. I was going to say, hey, are you going to pull a Habib, hop over that fence and go after the guy? He nearly did right as the fight started. And what the UFC commentators were sort of suggesting was that Tim Welch, Sean O'Malley's coach, was sort of feeding Merab information, almost pretending to be his coach as a way to distract him. We don't have confirmation on that, but we know that Herb Dean spoke with Tim Welch in between the 1st and 2nd round and warned him of a rule called excessive coaching, which in part encapsulates interfering with the integrity of the fight.
How about the number one, we get the kissing at the end of the round. What was that all about?
You know,
about round 2?
Merab is a bit of a madman. Him and Aljo almost got into it with some of O'Malley's fans on the way into the venue today. And from start to finish, you know, he was pointing at O'Malley. He was flexing at O'Malley. Ray Longo, Merab's coach, gave him a kiss on the cheek between rounds 1 and 2. So maybe he inspired Merab to, you know, reciprocate with some kisses to O'Malley. But it was really weird because Merab was doing this, right? And Herb Dean actually warned him to stop. Merab ends up letting go of the dominant position he was in, turning his back and walking away from O'Malley, allowing Sean to land a couple of legal sucker punches. And Herb Dean just looks at Merab and says, "That was your fault, bro." Like, just crazy stuff.
It was bizarre. And the other thing, it looked as if O'Malley was a little bit sloppy, if you will, at times. He made some mistakes. He grabbed the inside of Merab's glove. He just didn't look like the same Sean O'Malley we've seen in the last couple fights where he's the aggressor. Yes, he had some nice leg kicks, some nice knees up the middle. He was in good positions on the ground, but it didn't look like the same Sean O'Malley we've been accustomed to seeing.
And I think it's Merab's pressure that does that to a lot of fighters. I mean, if you look at the co-main event, right? Like every time Alexa Grasso would step in, she'd either get lit up by Valentino or taken down. And it's those seeds of doubt that a guy like Merab can start planting on someone when he's able to take them down round after round after round. It forces someone like O'Malley, who's usually really dictating the pace and the flow of a fight, to second guess himself, right? Because one mistake and you're back right where you started, you're down another round. It's really hard to take on a guy like Merab, who's I think now 5 takedowns short of matching George St. Pierre's record for the most takedowns in UFC history. Like, he's such a hard guy to prepare for. If you don't catch Merab sleeping, he's going to take you down, and it just completely folds your entire game plan.
Sean O'Malley's only round was really round 3, right? The knee in the final seconds?
Round 5, he hit the front kick, which hurt Merab and kind of had Merab fleeing. Round 3, I think, was a swing round. It was, you know, not a lot of damage on either side. I think Merab was probably pulling ahead. And about the last 15 seconds, O'Malley landed a couple of hard punches and a knee that caught Merab down the middle. For me, that was enough to give Sean round 3 and then round 5 on top of it. But I think those scorecards were very accurate. It was either 49-46, first 4 rounds for Merab, or 48-47, rounds 3 and 5 for O'Malley.
What's next now for Sugar Sean O'Malley? Because now he has to rebuild what he had just done. Where does he go next after this fight?
I'm glad you asked. You know, I was actually just writing this for one of our features over at CBSSports.com. I think when I talked to Merab, he actually wants Deiveson Figueiredo, the former flyweight champion, next. But based on the UFC's storytelling on the fight night, it seems like #1 contender Umar Nurmagomedov is for sure Merab's next opponent. If that's the case, if the timeline matches up, I think Sean O'Malley versus Deiveson Figueiredo makes a ton of sense. Deiveson just beat Marlon Chito Vera, the guy that O'Malley beat in his first title defense. Both strikers, and I think that's a real proving ground for Deiveson to either get a title shot in a second weight class, or for O'Malley to fine-tune things against a guy who's both a striking and a grappling threat, but not the wrestler that Merab is.
What are your thoughts on Corey Sandhagen? Because people are throwing that around as an option as well on social media. Where do you stand on that front?
That's a fight that fans have been asking about for so long.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think I've done a single interview with Sean or Corey where the other guy's name doesn't come up. And these are two of the fighters that were really sort of looked at as the hot next things in the bantamweight division. Obviously, Sean was able to capitalize. Corey's had some setbacks under the brightest lights against Umar, against Sterling, against Petr Yan. I don't think Corey Sandhagen is quite as close to a title shot as O'Malley is. However, it's a banger fight. You can justify making it now that O'Malley's not the champion. Forget my idea. That's the fight we've been wanting. It's probably going to make sense now more than ever. You sold me.
I'm in on that fight. Also, I'm in on, not that I hadn't been before, but I'm in on the Sphere. Just when you think you have seen it all, Shaq, you have not. I know you've been to some great events and some great fights in your career, but my goodness, what we saw, the visuals inside that Sphere, they were out of this world, literally.
Fantastic. You know, I give the UFC a lot of props. Like, I spoke with Chief Content Officer Craig Borsari before, and he did his best to sort of break down what it would look like, but you just can't understand it until you visualize it. I know people were kind of poo-pooing it during the preliminary card because, you know, they saved the best stuff for the pay-per-view. What really stands out to me is how well they executed the pay-per-view broadcast. They said they were going to make it feel like you were in the 300 or 400 seating area of the Sphere. I didn't know how well it panned out, but they really made you feel like you were there. Dana White said initially, this is a one-time deal. It's way too expensive. I feel like his stance has softened a bit as we drew closer to the event. I hope this becomes, if not an annual thing, at least something they come back to periodically.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that was just the visual, what took you places. It put you. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it really was. So I do hope that they at least use it once a year because it is so cool to see that and what you saw on this fight card. As the main event, Merab Dvalishvili beats Sean O'Malley via unanimous decision, 11 straight win, and taking the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Shak Mahjouri with us here on CBS Sports HQ. Shaq, thanks.